Good day! Welcome to my Hi-Fi audio channel. I'm Zhang Hanwen, an acoustic engineer. Today I'm going to talk about the history of electronics and vacuum tubes. And then I will introduce iconic and famous brands of vacuum tubes. Okay, let's start with the history. In fact, the discovery and use of the electricity is relatively recent event in human history. Back in 1875, Thomas Alva Edison, the inventor of the light bulb, discovered an interesting phenomenon during one of his experiments. When Edison connected a metal plate to a hot filament in a vacuum, and current flowed through the vacuum without a wire. At that time, he didn't know why current could flow through a vacuum, but this experiment sparked his interest and was recorded. So today we know the reason, and this phenomenon is known as the Edison's effect or thermionic emission. Later in 1901, a scientist, Owen Williams Richardson, discovered Richardson's law, described how heated metals emit electrons and how the current is exponentially related to the metal's temperature. Thermionic emission is indeed the fundamental theory behind vacuum tubes. So this is a very important theory in physics and also to vacuum tubes. And Richardson, the physics professor in London, was also awarded the Nobel Prize in Physics. And later in 1904, a scientist named John Ambrose Fleming, he invented an electrical component. It's called the diode tube. It is very important and revolutionary, of course, which he referred to as a valve. So this is also the reason why some people call vacuum tube valve. Does his name sound familiar to you? If you feel the same way, you might know he is well known for Fleming's left-hand rule in electronics. Especially if you especially you're majoring in EE. And he also established the first department of electrical engineering in the UK. So he really, into electronics. Not long after that, in 1906, a scientist, Lee De Forest, invented an electrical component, the triode tube. It's worth noting that vacuum tubes can also be called electron tube or valve, as I just stated. And in the later episode, I will explain the theory, structure, and function of diodes, triodes, tetrodes, and pentodes, and actually there are even more types of vacuum tubes. I will also introduce the model names of common audio vacuum tubes, of course, including the some very basic tubes. So please don't forget to like and subscribe to my Hi-Fi audio channel. Okay, let's get back to the history. The era of vacuum tubes lasted for a while, and it was not until 1947 that transistor was just invented by 3 scientists of Bell Laboratories in the United States. And these 3 scientists were also awarded the Nobel Prize in Physics for their accomplishment. And as the development of a transistor getting more and more mature, vacuum tube began to be slowly replaced. And it was not until the 1970s the vacuum tubes gradually declined. Unfortunately, those countries who originally had the best vacuum tube production technology in the world such as the UK, United States, Germany, and the Netherlands no longer produce vacuum tubes. So it's pretty sad. And today there are still vacuum tube manufacturers in China, Russia, and other countries that continue to produce a few types of vacuum tubes, especially for hi-fi audio, because not many scenarios using vacuum tubes nowadays. And even Western Electric has restarted their production lines for W300B. Of course, they're selling more expensive than before. However, people still widely recognized that vacuum tubes from 1950s, 1960s have the best quality. You can also see that if you compare the data sheets or through the experiment. So there are still many people looking for antique vacuum tubes. So if you go to online auctions now, you will often see pages selling vacuum tubes marked with the word NOS. That is the abbreviation of new old stock. That refers to vacuum tube inventory that was previously produced but has not been used. I guess many of you would have questions about what are the good and famous brands of vacuum tubes. Here I introduce some iconic, famous vacuum tube brands for your reference. Let's start from the UK. The famous British vacuum tube manufacturers include Mullard, Marconi, and GEC. Okay, and the next, let's start. The famous German vacuum tube manufacturers include Siemens, Telefunken, and AG. And the famous American vacuum tube manufacturers include RCA, GE, stand for General Electric, and WE, stand for Western Electric, and Amperex. And there's another famous Dutch vacuum tube manufacturer is Philips. And maybe some of you not knowing that Philips also bought the British Mullard in 1924 and the American Amperex in 1955. Therefore, Philips became an important and international vacuum tube manufacturer. Since there are so many vacuum tube manufacturers, I can only give a really brief introduction here. At least we may have a rough understanding of that the so-called famous brands of vacuum tubes. Thank you for watching today, and hope you all find this video helpful. And if you want to know a more specific topic, welcome to comment below, and I will share more information and knowledge about vacuum tube and hi-fi audio maybe in the next video, or maybe next videos. Anyways, I will try to find time to do it, and please support me with your like, subscribe, and share. Your precious like and subscriptions will really motivate me to keep going. And I'm Zhang Hanwen, and I will guide you through the wonderful world of vacuum tube and hi-fi audio.